Hello, my name is Kevin Boyle and I am from New Zealand, home of the America's Cup and the world champion All Blacks rugby team. Home also to many other champions in both sport and business, which all goes to show that New Zealand, a country of a mere 4.5 million people, can punch above its weight on the world stage. I am also looking to punch above my weight, but not just because I come from New Zealand. I am proposing change to the way we manage crime and corruption globally, because the way we are presently doing it is not working, and it will never work until alternative solutions such as the one I propose are provided due consideration and due diligence. I am the author of a book entitled Hit It With a Bigger Hammer. It is a cynical title because it describes how society, or more accurately policing, manages crime throughout society, with an increasingly bigger hammer as crime increases or spikes. Presently, there is no alternative to the policing model. My book proves that policing does not and cannot prevent crime, and it proposes an alternative crime prevention solution that, in collaboration with policing, will potentially provide society with optimum crime management outcomes in both prevention and enforcement. Outcomes that have never before been achieved. I will discuss a couple of examples of how society reacts when crime increases or events of serious crime spike. And I will begin with the most extreme crime in our society today, terrorism. I don't wish to highlight the recent spate of terrorist events in Britain, as I do not want to add to the grief of the families of the victims. I abhor what happened in Britain, and along with the rest of the world, I offer my sincere condolences to the families, friends and associates of its victims. I refer to it simply to demonstrate how society, and politicians in particular, respond with a bigger and bigger hammer, or more correctly, more and more policing. Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, immediately promised more policing resources around the special forces employed against terrorism. This is, of course, the correct response, particularly from a politician. It is what society expects and wants to hear. Notwithstanding, it is the only response available to Theresa May, even though it represents more of the same method under which the terrorist events occurred. This is because there is no alternative answer. There was a different response by another politician here in New Zealand, the leader of our New Zealand First Party, Winston Peters. He suggested in Parliament that we look to the families of the terrorists, the parents and the siblings and their friends and associates. He said these are the people who are close to the terrorists, who are able to identify the warning signs, and who are best able to intervene at the coalface before serious events occur. Whereas Theresa May was applauded for her response, Winston Peters was vilified by opposition parties for attempting to make political capital out of the tragic events. I don't agree, because after all, he was simply proposing an alternative solution that on the face of it appeared to have some merit. Indeed, I applauded his alternative thinking, because he was actually proposing critical elements of my solution proposed in my book, Hit It With a Bigger Hammer, a solution I founded in commerce in the 1990s in the failure of the policing ideology to successfully prevent millions of dollars of losses in commerce. We cannot afford to continually put down alternative thinking, particularly where the status quo is not working, and it is apparent to everyone that policing is not the complete answer. We need to embrace alternative ideas and discuss their merits, not dismiss them out of hand simply because they come from an opposition party. Another example involves another New Zealand politician, Judith Collins, or Crusher Collins, as she is colloquially known. In answer to increasing problems with boy races throughout New Zealand that policing was unable to contain because it became a them versus policing game to the boy races, she enacted legislation that enabled the state to confiscate the young people's cars and crush them. This is an extreme reaction, and I'm sure could have been dealt with better, perhaps with the type of answer that Winston Peters proposed. at its coalface, as opposed to this extreme draconian measure. I do not propose to change policing per se, simply to policing's preeminent role in crime prevention, not public policing in the first instance, but in commerce and sport, where its ideology has been more recently replicated to prevent theft and fraud and corruption, and also performance-enhancing drug abuse and antisocial behaviours. Unlike public policing, commerce and sport are controlled environments where covenants can be introduced, where all parties can be involved together in managing every corruptive risk and threat at every level of an organisation. These are the areas where it is more evident that the policing ideology does not prevent the behaviours it is employed to prevent. They are the areas where it is obvious the policing ideology is not compatible with the aspiration and culture of commerce and sport, where mutual trust and inclusiveness are prerequisite. In more recent times, these are the foremost areas the policing ideology has been replicated from public policing. Successful application of my prevention solution in these areas can be simply transferred back into public policing to complement policing and crime management overall. I do not underestimate the enormity of my tasks. One man attempting to effect change in the biggest and perhaps longest established institution in the history of our society. But I have dedicated the past 35 years of my life to the task, and it has been a lonely and personally costly challenge. However, it has also had its rewards, and the single biggest reward was, after much research, finding the solution in commerce to prevent theft and fraud in the company it was employed over a 5-year period to save that company estimated previous losses of between $7 and $13 million per annum. It is because of this unprecedented success that I continue with my cause. That success proved policing doesn't prevent offending. More importantly, it proved policing cannot prevent offending because its ideology directly opposes what is required to prevent offending. So if this is true in commerce, it logically follows that the same ideology fails in its later application to sport and also in public policing. After all, I only need to point to the many examples of continuing corruption in sport and the worldwide burgeoning crime statistics, overcrowded prisons, congested criminal courts, and stretched policing resources to propose to you that policing does not prevent crime. These statistics are compelling, and so is the success of my solution that does prevent offending and uses critical elements that are antithetic to policing and therefore not achievable under its oversight. Let's look at some of those elements. Inclusion is by far the most important element. My solution includes everyone in an organisation, from the boardroom to the coalface, from the executive managers and administrators to the employees in commerce and the athletes and players in sport. This inclusion engenders a mutual trust and common purpose. It makes everyone a stakeholder and enables everyone, individually and collectively, to demonstrate intolerance to offending. Secondly, an agreement between all of the stakeholders establishes a reporting methodology whereby the entire workforce agrees on a rulebook to tackle the initial stages of offending at its coalface and therefore diverting potential problems before they occur and escalate. Thirdly, the agreement sets a clear escalation process that allows for a number of steps before taking regular policing and prosecution options. This is equivalent to giving people a fair chance to reflect on their actions in a manner which does not place their colleagues in a whistleblower situation, and it successfully overcomes the code of silence that currently protects the offenders. I don't believe crime prevention and policing was ever consciously joined. There is no record of this, and I believe the prevention role has simply morphed into policing because of its synergy to crime. With no one to question or challenge policing's ability to prevent crime alongside its enforcement role, policing has become self-serving and self-perpetuating. Once we understand this, we can start a conversation that might lead to change. This is how Hit It With a Bigger Hammer can be a catalyst for change, by creating the itch for you to scratch. I cannot do it alone, and this is the reason for the book and these series of videos, to demonstrate this failure in policing and the resultant systemic failure of our criminal justice system, and at the same time prevent its solution that only you, all of you, can easily adopt. Over the coming weeks, I will release a series of videos explaining all of this to you more fully and providing you the opportunity to respond. I would encourage you to read the book, where you will get a greater understanding of the problem and what I propose as a solution. Together with the videos, they will hopefully encourage you to help me to effect the change that is needed. In upcoming videos, I'm going to talk about the solution itself, how and why it came into being, and the unprecedented success it achieved. Unprecedented because the policing ideology has never achieved such success. I'm also going to talk about the people and the organisations I have since proposed this solution to, and the often surprising outcomes. Everyone has a voice, and it deserves to be heard. Use yours, starting with reading my book, Hit It With a Bigger Hammer, and informing yourselves. This will help me to continue my pursuit for change. We'll talk later. Thank you.